That's got a laser too.
Well, you know, is it as good as this laser?
Probably not.
Okay. Yeah, I want a laser that people could see. Sorry. Hi.
Hey.
My name is Dave Churn. I'm from formerly DST Systems. 2 weeks ago we got bought, so there you'll see that in a second. You're here for making JSON with SQL functions, and a lot of this comes out of a project that we did to basically communicate with JSON. We've got a data lake concept that we are building right now, and our friends from the data lake basically said that they would like to get messages from us. Oh, by the way, can you do them in JSON? Well, as we're swapping data around in our mainframes, we had to do something, okay? And we took a look at the JSON functions available to us in DB2 and noticed they were rather rudimentary, and thus project was built and this presentation was built. And that was more than an introduction for me. So, our objectives today. Sorry, I'm just a little rattled. We're about 10 minutes behind, so I'm going to try and catch up. If you could save your questions for the end, I would really appreciate it. Our objectives today are to take a quick look at what JSON is compared to what we've got with DB2. We're going to compare the data types between JSON and DB2. Take a look at the real meat of the presentation, which is converting JSON and DB2 data types. Okay, going both ways. We're trying to figure out how to get our DB2 information into a JSON message or a JSON object, and also back into DB2 from a JSON object. We'll take a look at the JSON functions that are available inside DB2. And then we'll take a quick look at alternatives and hopefully have some time for questions. There we go. Disclaimer. This is a standard disclaimer that DST asks me to put on everything. Just to give you a brief once-over about DST Systems. We're a large shop. We service many mutual fund clients. We also service some clients in the healthcare market. We use DB2 ZOS and we use DB2 LUW Craft. And as I mentioned just at the beginning of the presentation, we got bought 2 weeks ago by SS&C. So actually, I'm an SS&C employee. So what is JSON? At its very basic level, this is a JSON object. It's just a string of characters, kind of like you would see with XML. But as you can see, it's a lot shorter than XML too. So the official acronym is JavaScript Object Notation. It's text-based, uses variable length formatting. So if you've got 6 different 35-byte character fields for an address, you don't have to send all that data down the line. It's designed to exchange information between programming languages. So it's not just for JavaScript, it's not just for Java. The particular software that we wrote was actually COBOL. So that's kind of cool. Characters are encoded in Unicode, so it's not exactly an EBCDIC kind of thing. And it's recommended for REST communications. Okay. The structural tokens that you kind of got to watch out for are the curly brackets, which is, well, I'll get into those. Square brackets, there's a colon, there's a comma, and there are a couple literal name tokens that go along that have to be exactly like this. There's true and false, and then there's null. And you don't put quotes around those, you don't put space. Well, you can put spaces around them, but I shorten them up to be as small as possible because in my mind, everything has to be a message and it has to be as short as possible because I'm putting it over the line. So, insignificant white space is allowed, it's okay, you can throw it in there, JSON will understand. If you're looking for more than just the basics information, I've got a couple websites up here, json.org, which I've used some of their information in this presentation. The W3 Schools has some good information on this too. If you're looking to check your JSON format, DB2 has its normal error handling to show you if you're trying to build something that it doesn't understand in JSON. And it's really good to have one of these format checkers available to you. So you can just copy, if DB2 gives you an error, you can copy this into the formatter, and the formatter will tell you specifically what the issue is. There's also a couple of YouTube videos by Jane Nan, an IBM associate, and they're both good for understanding what DB2's got available for JSON and where it's at. So that's JSON. Let's talk about the data types that we've got. In this particular part of the presentation, if we're dealing with a JSON data type, we've got this nice little weird circle. If we're talking about IBM DB2, we've got a nice little blue box there for us. So for JSON, you've got, these are all the different data types that you've got available to you. Okay, you've got string, which I was telling John a little earlier, that is basically a generic thing where you can dump a whole lot of different data types. Number has a very specific definition. When you talk about objects, this is the one with curly brackets go around. It's basically a combined set of data variables for you. You've also got access to an array, which is where the square brackets come in. And then there's my three other values of true, false, and null. So JSON supports nulls, so we don't have to do anything special with our DB2 nulls. The primitive types are here of string, number, true, false, and null. The structured types are the objects in the arrays, and those are basically other repeated occurrences of the primitive type. So when you talk about an object, you're just saying it's an unordered set of 0 to many name and value pairs, because that's basically what JSON gets into. You've got a name, you've got a value. Curly brackets surround the object, and you can nest objects inside of objects. When you're talking about arrays, it's just an array of data variables. So in this case, you've got square brackets around your array, and then you just put data types in there. Okay, so I've got a list of names for from the Heart of America DB2 users group and the year that they were in there. So you can mix your data types too. And you can also nest arrays so that the first array is here. These are the officers of the Heart of America DB2 users group, and then there's all their titles. So strings are anything surrounded by quotes. Okay? You can put anything you want in there, and there are very few rules on this. The big one is that you don't put a quotation mark, which is the double quote, inside your string unless you put an escape character on it, just before it. And you also can't put the escape character inside the string unless you put an escape character in front of the escape character. Okay? There's also these really low-valued Unicode control characters that it also wants a escape character in front of, but you don't see a lot of those in character fields in your database. So I've got some examples here. So my first example is example, and then of course my middle nickname is Bruce, so we put quotes around it, and that's why I've got the escape characters in front of it. And then also if you want to put a date in, here's a way that you can put dates inside a string. Numbers are very picky. You have a specific format for how the numbers are put together. So you only get one leading 0, which if you've ever used the character function on a decimal field in DB2, you know you're in trouble, because it likes to put lots of zeros in front of that. And that's part of the next part of the presentation. When you have a decimal point on your number, you have to have something behind it, which again, if you've got a 4 in DB2 in a decimal field, you come out, if it's a 5-character field, if it's a decimal line 5, and you've got a value of 4 in it, you're actually going to get a couple zeros in front, a 4 and a decimal point. And JSON will choke on that. So if you've got a decimal point, you've got to have some numbers behind it, and then you can also get into exponents as far as your number. So as long as you follow this format, everything works just fine. Oh, and the other thing is that if you are using something other than a decimal point, which I know a lot of the EU countries like to use a comma for the decimal point, not in JSON. It's got to be a period. The other two data types that we've got, Boolean, that's where the true false comes, okay? You can, if you've got something that truly is a true or false, if JavaScript is pulling this back, they need it to be one of those two. It's got to be lowercase without quotation marks. Null is, it's got to be lowercase without quotation marks. Okay? So you've got a fairly small set of data types available to you in JSON. Okay? In DB2, obviously, we have lots more. And I'm going to assume that most of you are familiar with most of these data types. When we get to one of the ones where I found something weird, I'll bring it up. But, I mean, for our single byte strings, we all know about carv, arcar, clubs. There is a 4-bit data binary option that you can put on your character columns, in which case it'll take binary data for you and not convert it between EBCDIC and ASCII when you send it somewhere. There's also double byte strings of graphic, var graphic, and double clob. So that's all our different strings. You've got a possibility of binary strings available to you too. And so you've got binary, var binary, and blob. These are not associated with any kind of code page, so you don't declare them as EBCDIC or ASCII or anything like that. They're just there, and that's the value. Don't change it. It's, at least in our shop, we use it for encrypted fields. Okay? For somebody's password, we drop it in a binary instead of dropping it in a car field. These things are not always human readable, and you can send them in a string, but sometimes it doesn't make sense.
There's no difference between a binary and a 4-bit data, really, though, right?
The only thing that I found, okay, the question was, is there a difference between a binary and a character with 4-bit data? Not the way DB2 handles them, okay? The way DB2 defines them in the catalog, yeah, there's a difference. There's actually, if you look at the column in syscolumns, a binary is defined as binary. The character is defined as character, and then there's another field in there that says, oh, this is 4-bit data. So it basically handles them the same.
Excuse me, what about blob? Is that
I'm sorry?
the blob?
And my problem is I'm not.
He said blob.
I'm sorry.
Blob.
Blob.
Binary large.
Yes, there's also a binary large object.
And this we support it for, I mean, if you have it in the DB2, is that supported?
Yes.
No matter what's the name? I mean, now we have two, this is just two points. Is that right?
The blob?
Two guys.
Yeah, 2K. Yeah, okay, the question is about the blobs, and the blobs are kind of like a clob in that they're a huge field available to you, and DB2 doesn't assume that their character bits in there. Okay, so we also have XML columns available to us. DB2 stores them in an internal format. If you externalize them, they're in character. If you externalize an XML, it can be sent as a string. But of course, if you're going to get the data out, it requires further parsing to get the actual data from the XML in there. So that was kind of the DB2 character strings. We've got lots of options for the numbers, which is 3 sizes of integer. We've got our decimal, which is fixed point, which for converting over to JSON proves to be a little problematic, but I'm getting ahead of myself. And then we've also got the dec float, which was given to us. Dec float has a couple different precisions supported, and interestingly enough, it also supports the values of positive and negative infinity, positive and negative quiet man, and positive and negative signaling man, okay? Which we have to consider once we start flipping things over into JSON. The other thing that I'll say is that these values are not, well, actually dec float itself is not fully supported in all host languages, like COBOL. Got to convert it to something else. We also have approximate numbers available to us. These are all floating numbers, but they give you approximate values. If you're using them for financial transactions, be aware that if I just happen to lob 15 cents off your account, you're probably going to get upset with me. And I am working for the financial services side of DST. So we know they're there, we don't use them a lot. We also have date and time representations. The interesting things with that is that you've got different formats that you can throw it into. Most of our developers just leave it at the default, and they don't know that there's a USA format available, and we don't particularly ever use it. Timestamps can be variable size too. So if you think it's always 26 bytes, not always. Sometimes it can be down as short as 19, and it can be up to 32. DB2 also has this row ID available to you. And for me, the row ID, yeah, it looks like binary, it's controlled by DB2, and why would I ever send it out the door? Because it's something that DB2 is doing internally to that particular row. So it's available, but I want to ignore it. All right, so that's our types. Okay, we've got a short list of about 5 types over here on JSON. We got a whole list of types over here on DB2. So the main part of the presentation is, well, we've got to do some cooking. Okay, and this is how we're going to basically take the DB2 data and convert it into JSON. The guidelines that I use, because it's always important to have requirements, or if you don't have requirements, to at least have some guidelines that you're chasing after. Okay, because we want the resulting object to be easily manipulated by JavaScript. So I don't want to pass them anything that's going to make them choke, because that's not how we do distributed processing well. My objects are all going to be transmitted. Okay, if I'm not transmitting them down to the data lake into the DB2 LUW system, I'm going to transmit them to another mainframe. I'm actually going to take them apart from JSON too. So now we're doing something cool. We got 2 mainframes talking in JSON. No JavaScript involved. Okay. Like I said, I want the smallest size. Decimal and decfloat may be the exception, depending upon how you're going to convert them. All my resulting data types have to come in as character, because I'm concatenating them together. And concat doesn't accept any other data type except something in character. The resulting objects got to be separated, so I can't fumble the meaning on somebody. Decfloat's special values in the first draft and the way we coded it are considered nulls. Okay, so if you tell me that my account has an infinite number of dollars in it, no, it's got null. Not happening. So we consider decfloat specials to be null. And we also said binaries and row IDs aren't going to be included. All right, so useful tools in your toolbox. Okay, these are your kitchen knives, these are your forks. Okay, the car function is wonderful, as well as the concat in both its varieties. Coalesce is going to help you out with any kind of nulls, and if you're going to not send the null value in JSON and just give you some kind of default, Coalesce is going to help you out there. Replace is going to help you out with character strings that have those special characters. And then it's always good to be able to trim spaces and trim zeros. So trim, rtrim, and ltrim are really good. To get Boolean values out, you're going to want some kind of case statement. And then with numeric processing, we're going to flip between decimals and decfloats. Okay. In my following slides, please note that on the top is going to be the list of the string, list of the functions with the field name, and then an actual example of what it actually looks like, because some of these get really hairy. So 4-bit data. I said in my guidelines that I'm going to get rid of these things. So in most cases, yeah, I just said it's null. But if you really want to do it, okay, you're going to have to figure out, am I going to trim any kind of non-information bytes from my binary? Do I have the equivalent of hexadecimal zeros on the trailing end of my binary that I'd like to trim so that when I go through the field, I'm going to make it shorter? Okay. Do I have special characters in there? Okay. If I've got special characters in there, I'm going to have to go ahead and make some replacements. And this is actually for DB2 string. So I got ahead of myself. This is actually for any kind of string. Okay, characters, var characters, anything that you want. This is the set of commands that you use. Okay, so I've got my character field right here. sitting in character text. And inside that, I'm going to go ahead and do one replace, which is going to replace any of the backslashes into double backslashes. So I get my escape character on there. And then from there, I'm also going to get this one, which is actually a double quote. It's not 4 single quotes. And put the escape character in front of that. And then I'm also going to have to concatenate double quotes on the front. Okay, sorry, I was chasing myself down another rabbit hole. So here, my data comes out as backwards half. And all I did was swap in an extra backslash to that particular field. This one does a real good job for most any of the character strings that you've got. For going XML to JSON, of course, my first question is you're embedding XML in JSON? Do you want to do that? It certainly seems like we're double embedding it. So, one of the things that you could do is take my same solution when I was saying I got binary fields, so I just make it null, or I just don't send it, or I ignore it. You could do the same thing with your XML. If you really want to send it, of course, you can bring your XML out of the internal format and serialize it, and then the only replace you're going to need here is the backslashes, because XML already has double quote as a restricted character, and we'll go ahead and convert it into something that we won't have to worry about. So if you really want to do XML, you can do XML. Okay? And that's right down here with the one replace. I'd recommend XML documents can get really large. I would try and make sure that you also check the length of your XML document before you try and shove it through these, because replace has a 32K limit on it. So the actual scalar function itself has a limit, will truncate your XML, and will make things confusing once it actually gets there. But if you've got a nice small XML like this, where you've just got me as a customer and we're sending my name as a request with double quotes, great. You put this into a string field, and there's your string. Date and time has to go to string, because like I said, numbers are very specifically formatted. So just go ahead and stick it inside some kind of string. If you want to get fancy and use one of the different date and time formats, character accepts those, and I flip both of these to the USA, and that is a very weird time representation for the USA one, but maybe that's why nobody uses it. When we're talking about timestamps, again, we got to use a string. Okay, nothing special needs to go in there. Just in this case, I'm converting them over to character so that it's all a nice character field, because a timestamp is not a character field. We got to convert everything to character so that we can concatenate it together. And if you're using time zone, please trim it, because there's like 100 spaces on the end of that thing. So it'll give you a 140 byte field for a timestamp with time zone. And okay, yeah, remove the trailing 122 spaces. Numbers, as long as you're not doing decimal, are easy, are really easy, because you just put character on whatever you want, trim to that. Poof, you're done. Okay? And integers don't have decimal points, so we don't worry about any of the decimals. The character function itself leaves one trailing space. Okay? So if you want, and you want to get a little bit faster, and you can go ahead and bear the space, forget the trim too. Okay, I went to deck float because it's easier. Deck float, I was telling you, has those special values. The nice thing about those special values is that a negative infinity is less than any number. Okay, a negative signaling nan is less than a negative infinity, and a quiet nan is less than a signaling nan. So when you get down here to your case statement, it actually becomes quite easy. You can say, for my deck float number, if I'm greater than negative infinity and less than positive infinity, well, there's my number. Otherwise, it's null, because that was my solution. My solution is I'm not dealing with any of that stuff. But to help you guys out, if you have to deal with that stuff, there's just a slight change that you can put in there. I put the null function on front, just in case you've got a null deck float number. If we are greater than negative infinity or less than positive infinity, there I'm going to go ahead and put the number out. Otherwise, I'm going to put a double quote, concatenate it to deck float number, and another double quote, because the result comes back as character. Okay, and now I got to treat it like a string. So I'm going to come out with negative infinity. Okay, warn the JavaScript person that this is a possibility, because if they're expecting a number and you give them a character string, it may cause their process to break. Decimals. 7 slides on decimals. Okay, the big thing with JSON is that it wants no extra leading zero before the decimal point. And the only time you get to put a leading zero is if your value is between 1 and negative 1. Okay? If you're any bigger than that, no leading zeros, period. The character and the varchar functions are also changing on ZOS. Okay? If you are before DB211, let's see, results changed on DB2 version of if compatibility. If you're before DB211 or you're using character 9, it's going to come out one way. If you are after DB210 and your BIF compatibility is set to current, you'll get a different way. And I'll show you, which is why I came up with 7 slides on this. In the following examples, please be aware, character 9 is the old format. Okay, that's what we've been dealing with since DB2 was created. Okay, the CAR is the new format. And the new format's just a little more forgiving as far as converting it over to JSON, but only just a little. So here we've got a nice decimal 5.2 field, and that's kind of the raw value that as it's sitting in DB2. If we run it through the character function, this is the new one, it's going to go ahead and convert it into this value and put spaces on the back for the length of the field. Okay. Please note that if you're in between 1 and negative 1, there's no leading zero in front of it. Okay, so as far as the JSON format goes, it wants that 0. If you're using the old function, you're getting these nice things, and you're going to have to do a bit of work. Okay, because JSON wants a 5 to be 5 or 5.00. It'll take both. But again, I'm doing transmissions. I want it as 5. I want everything off there. Okay? And if I'm right here in this nice little range here, I only get 1 0. And I get no zeros here. And this nice little negative sign always has to be on the front. So because it's so picky, we get to do this. Okay? And basically what you're trying to do is, and of course, this is where you have a decimal field with a decimal point. Okay? The rules change if you have a decimal field without a decimal point. Okay? So with a decimal point, you basically have to look for the different sizes of the field. Okay? So the very first thing I'm going to do is say, is it null? If it's null, I'm just out of here. That's a happy thing. If I'm greater than 1, okay, I'm going to do this line of stuff and make sure that the zeros are gone and trim all the nice stuff that I need to do. I'm not going to go walk you through each one of these, but I'm just going to point out the fact that you've got at least 4 different conditions here, so you're making sure that if you're greater than 1, greater than or equal to 1, if you're greater than 0, if you're less than or equal to negative 1, if you're less than 0, oh, by the way, if all of that is not true, then you're just 0. Okay, and I can just substitute the 0 in there, and we're done. So it's a case statement. Yeah, it would be tedious to code this every time, but you do what you got to do. And of course, this was all written into dynamic SQL, so I've got code that generates all this stuff whenever I encounter a decimal field. If you've got the character, if you're using the new character function, things are just a little bit easier. The big opportunity that you've got here is that instead of having to check individually for greater than 1 or less than -1, I can do it once because I don't have to trim anything off the front of the field. I do have to do something specific if I am greater than 0 because all I want is a 0 there to start with. If I'm less than 0, I've got to have a 0 and a -1 up front. And then also I get my dodge at the very end to say it's 0. If I don't have any kind of decimal points, character is beautiful. Character is nice and easy to convert. The old way, the character 9, it's a little more involved, but not as bad as when you have a decimal point. So to show you the case statements get a little easier. Like I said, all you're doing is you're checking if it's greater than 0, if it's less than 0, otherwise it's 0. And if I'm using the new character function on a decimal X field, I can just do this. And that's where I'd like to be for everything. So as you get into this and as you advance, you really want to push your system guys to start using the new character function because it'll make your life a lot easier. Okay, last one. I did this presentation once before for a users group, and I had the feeling while I was sitting there that if maybe all I needed to do was take the decimal field through dec float when I'm using the old function, that it would work just fine. And it did, for the most part. So if I've got my 5, it comes out with 5.00. Okay, good enough for JSON. Okay, is it good enough for me? Well, no, because I don't want the 0.00 on there. Okay, because I'm trying to save those couple bits. We've got lots of numbers that we pass around. So this is a lot easier than the whole case statement, which is by brute force forcing the number into the format that you want. So, you know, how much effort did you go through? That's your choice. I'm giving you tools here. So for Boolean, obviously you're going to use a case statement. Okay? You've got some kind of flag that you set up on the database. It can be a character yes/no flag, can be a integer 0/1 flag, whatever you want. The big thing that you have to watch on these is that you only get 2 states. Okay? You can't put a third state on there. So a nullable Boolean column is not a concept that you can implement in JSON. Okay? So I would recommend that your case statement read, if my flag is 1, then it's true, otherwise it's false, and get out of there. Okay? Sure, it would be easy enough to do something like this, but JSON doesn't understand it, and I would recommend against it. For the DB2 null value, we showed that in the decimal fields. You know, I always have that extra line in the case statement that says if this field is null, then make it null. The other thing that you can do is that if you're not dealing particularly with a number and you're dealing with some kind of field like a date or something like that, coalesce, value, if null, whatever flavor your shop likes to use that and concatenate a null in the band. So that you can get that nice little null character right there. Now, you can do binaries, okay? I'm trying to help out. I personally would ignore these things, but if you really, really need to send them, there's a hex function as a scalar function, and it'll take whatever you got and put it out into hexadecimal characters for you, and you can even put quotes around it and say it's a string. But, okay, again, you got to talk to whoever's receiving this and make sure that they know this is coming, because this is not JSON. This is us pushing the standard, which we always love to do. We're in IT.
Does that handle big Indian and little Indian, or you have to do that all within the program?
Okay, the question is, does that handle big Indian or little Indian?
Yeah, the hex.
What are you talking the hex function?
Yeah. Well, not so much, but I guess the receiving end would have to interpret all as big Indian.
Yes, you're right. Because basically, the receiving end is going to get hexadecimal characters, and there is no automatic conversion going on.
Okay.
So it'll get it in ASCII characters, and then they've got to take the ASCII and turn it into EBCD,
Yeah.
which then, okay. Yeah, I was so glad that I got to ignore them.
Okay.
All right, so how are we doing for time? Am I actually catching up?
You have 15 left.
I've been talking a mile a minute, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm losing you guys. 'Cause
It's warm in here.
Oh, okay. Well, it's the other thing is that if I realize I'm not breathing, that means I'm going too fast. Okay, so how do programs get JSON data into DB2 format? Well, they, Vice President, I'm so bad with names, was talking about this, as he was talking about the RESTful services, and you get to tie into a Java API and stuff like that. Yes, it is available. When I was doing the presentation and I was searching on the web, the only time that I could find information on it was when they were talking about this IBM DB2 accessory suite for version 11. Okay, it has since been incorporated into the main code of DB2. Okay, so systems programmers have assured me that it's there and that you don't need to use the accessory pack. If you're looking for documentation, look for the accessory suite. It's got it all there. Okay. The LUW has this, and there are some SQL functions that basically apply to both LUW and ZOS. Okay? And a lot of what support that you get out of these functions are you get to convert between VSON and JSON. Okay, all right, now great. I'm throwing another one at you, right? VSON, what's that? It's binary JSON. Okay, that's all it is. And IBM, the same way that it did handle XML, and that you got the external format, you got the internal format, IBM takes the JSON and converts it into binary JSON when it stores it into its internal format so that it can deal with it better. Okay, so there's ways to convert between VSON and JSON. You can extract data from a VSON document, which means you've got to run another function on your JSON when you're storing it in DB2 to convert it to VSON so that you can then start pulling the information out, all of which takes a little time. The Java APIs have some good functionality. I wasn't dealing with Java. Okay, sorry. It's in the documentation. You can save or retrieve JSON objects into DB2 tables with some of these functions. And they've also got what they call performance features, which in my case seemed like, yeah, it's faster than doing it by hand. Okay, so converting between VSON and JSON, there's just two scalar functions. One's called JSON to VSON, and one's called VSON to JSON. Good stuff. And it just converts it into the other format for you. When you're converting to VSON, it lands in a blob up to 16 megabytes. When you're converting from binary to JSON, it converts to a cloud in 16 megabytes.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
When you do the binary one, is that will save the code? Save you from code, more codes?
Okay, so when you're doing JSON to VSON, it's going to go ahead and convert it to its special format. And with that, it also has some identification for what type of JSON data type it is. So they say in most cases it makes for a smaller message, but of course they're adding some information in there too. So, have I answered your question?
My question was, if I do it in binary, that's mean not a lot of conversion getting. So.
Okay, so why? I'm going to interpret your question, and let me restate it. I'm hearing, why would I ever want to convert it to binary? Is that DB2 itself stores JSON in the binary format. Okay, so when you're dealing with any of the scalar functions with DB2, it wants it in the binary format. So why would you ever want to store it? Why would you ever want to convert it over to binary? To get DB2 to work. Come talk to me afterwards. We'll get a little more clarity on that one. Okay, so when you do this, when you take your JSON document and you put it into BSON, if you've got an error, it will give you this. Okay, and this is very clear. Sorry, sarcasm. This is not very clear exactly where the error is, and it just gives you this nice little SQL state. And if you've been in ZOS a year or two, you would also know, hey, look right here. That tells me where the error is. No, it doesn't. It's -1. So IBM gave you a default. Okay. This is from the JSON formatter. And it will specifically tell you that you got an invalid number in there, you were expecting a comma or a bracket, not a string. String should be wrapped in double quotes. Okay, what? Well, look right there. Number. Number 4 has got a period on it. So you remember as I was talking to you about you got to strip the zeros, you got to get rid of the decimal points. Well, here it is. And if you look, right there it is. I put number 4 with the leading zeros and the decimal point. But this I can read. This gets me to exactly what the problem was, especially if you've got large JSON documents you're trying to parse through. Okay, this is the useful feature in JSON. Okay, and this would be another good reason for why you would convert it to BSON, because then you can use this JSON value. If you know that you have one particular name value that you're trying to get to, you can tell it exactly what the name is, and DB2 goes and finds it for you. Okay, you've also got to. Okay, you also have to know which kind of data value it is, and these are what DB2 supports. So if you've got a string, you can tell them it's a var character or a var character for binary, where n is how big it is. For numbers, you've got any one of these integers, big integers, doubles, or if it's got a decimal point, it's a dec float. Date and time actually comes out through BSON. And if you've got Boolean, give it an integer with a 0 or 1. A couple of other functions which are nominally useful. JSON length doesn't actually return how long your field is, but if you've got an array, it'll tell you the number of items in your array. Okay, so if I've got eight different pieces of data in there, JSON length will come back and give you 8. If you tell it a non-array variable, it will come back and say, no, sorry, I can't do that. JSON type will return the type of BSON data, and if you take a look at this presentation afterwards in the notes, I just basically did a list of all the different BSON data types, as well as the ones that are now deprecated. JSON table. JSON table is used in the from clause, and I really expected it to look like XML table to break things out for me, and it didn't really do that. It told me data types, and it kind of sort of gave me a value, like the JSON value, but it didn't work as expected. Okay, so if you're gonna use this one, I would actually recommend that you try it, and play with it, and see what happens, because I'm sure that this is going to be one of the first ones that they improve, and they give us some improvements inside DB212. Here's some of the stuff that the Java API does. I have not played with these features because we have not implemented the Java API inside our shop. So this is basically from the documentation. Gets you some abilities to do indexes, import and export JSON data, as well as get some information out of the JSON documents. Okay, so alternatives. I got a couple of different alternatives. What if you don't like JSON? Okay, well, obviously one of the things that you can do is do BSON. Okay, it's a slightly different format. It's in binary. You do types and stuff like that. I don't know a lot about BSON, but DB2's got a great way to convert JSON to BSON. So if you can get it into JSON, you can get it into BSON, and then out the door it goes. XML is actually a popular one. So if instead of name value pairs of presentation, making JSON with SQL functions and then attendance 123, you can put it into this particular format. XML's been around a while, and lots of things support XML. The other things that you can start getting into is custom solutions. Okay, if you guys want to write your own custom solution, that's always a possibility. Most companies right now want something delivered to them. Look, here, we'll just buy it, not have our developers do something that's unique that nobody else will be able to deal with. We did some of this stuff with fixed format messages. Okay, and when I say fixed format messages, I'm talking COBOL copybooks. Okay, great. I got a COBOL program here, just moves the fields in. COBOL program here, moves the fields out. Roll. The other possibility is Google has this neat little thing called protocol buffers. Protocol buffers actually are their very own I/O modules, and you write a protocol buffer to be able to give it the data. It formats it however it's going to do it. It sends it off, and somebody else has a same copy of said protocol buffer to be able to tear it to pieces. It sounds like I/O modules to me. Okay, so when we were custom writing our own I/O modules to read and write stuff, that's kind of what I noticed from Google. So I was thinking that JSON's probably a better bet. Okay, and as far as sending small messages around, I really like JSON. I used to be a big XML advocate and was trying to get our people to put it everywhere because it's not fixed format. I'm now a big JSON fan.
It's actually, if you put it into JSON to Google, they're going to convert it into a protocol buffer before they put anything on their own wire.
Oh, okay.
Just FYI.
Did not know that. We're also a financial firm. Okay, so we're real leery about sending your information out to here, there, and everywhere, especially Google. Google likes to keep information, and when it's PII, we don't really feel comfortable with the way they do it. If you don't want to convert JSON with SQL, if you think that there is a better way to do it, well, yeah, JavaScript. Oh my, they do such a great job with JSON, and as far as getting their information in and out of it, they can just kind of parse it and stringify it. Poof, they're done. Okay, none of the stack scalar functions or anything like that. COBOL, if you're into COBOL version 6, actually has verbs for it too. The little bit of extra that you have to do there is that you have to put it into a specific data structure and then say JSON generate. And it'll take all the names, and that's your name for the name value pair, and then it'll put the right value behind it. Also with COBOL, if you really want to go the cheap way, you can string and unstring things. Okay, there your programmers are going to have to do the stringing and make sure that they've got the format right. Yes, David?
How much overhead is all that JSON processing?
I have not measured it. Like I said, I'm doing messages, and my problem is that whenever I do any kind of performance evaluation on messages, the numbers are so small that the white noise of the system drowns out any kind of signal that I could get out of it. So it's fast. It's fast because it's underneath the noise of everything else that's going on in our system. ZOS has system subroutines available. If you want to do that, that's actually how we implemented it because we were on COBOL 5 when we had our COBOL program starting to swap JSON. So we went ahead and used the Z system subroutines. And any programming language that concatenates strings, you can write it to get it going. Conclusions, yes, we made it. Simple data, JSON is a simple data exchange format. It's smaller than XML. So if you've got stuff that you're sending up and down the lines, this is the way to go. Your data is going to survive automatic conversions because it's all in character. Okay? And when you go from mainframe down to a Linux, Unix, Windows server, there's an automatic conversion that goes on to those characters, and they each talk in whatever hex patterns they want to. Support's available everywhere, especially in JavaScript. ZOS has got some great stuff. DB2's got some good stuff. And other programming
So,
languages. have
Question I can
stuff.
think of on the performance end of it.
Okay, sorry, question.
Because we're getting this, we're doing Java on mainframe right now.
Okay,
And a couple of the application developers, they will start using JSON and stuff. And what I'm kind of telling them from my end, being a support guy, is why don't you just convert it once you get it out of the database to your JSON format within there and then pass on so we're not incurring MIPS on the mainframe.
okay,
So that's my big take would be that why don't you do the conversion inside your, application and then pass it on.
we're talking about performance question, and you've got a specific design question, which I'm going to have to go back to Roger's answer of it depends. And a lot of it, is how and where you're focusing on what the performance is. Okay. In our case, we're done. So I'm gonna have to leave
No, it's fine.
end of your question as it depends. Thank you all for coming. I do appreciate your patience today in getting this thing going.